Okay, hi there, Zach. Welcome to lesson 111. This one starts on page 468, and I am going to try and make some sense today because it is right now 4:23 in the morning, and I'm at work, but I had a little bit of a break. So let's talk about conjunctions and then disjunctions. Okay, first of all, here we go. I asked my dog, what's 2 minus 2? He said nothing. That's a pretty smart dog, right? Okay, all right, so let's start more on conjunctions. And you'll remember that a conjunction is a statement of two different conditions. That means two different things that have to be met. So for example, this is a conjunction right here. And so 4 is less than x and x is less than 14. And that is all together in one conjunction. It's kind of like the same thing as using a conjunction in grammar, right? Okay, so what does this say? This tells us that x has to be greater than 4 and this word is important, and x also has to be less than 14. So these are the two conditions that have to be met. X is greater than 4. They just wrote it a little bit backwards compared to this, right? But that's okay. X is greater than 4 and x is less than 14. And we have to have both because of the word and. So in other words, these conditions have to be overlapping, right? And what the book tells you to do is if there is a conjunction, put your finger over both parts of it so you can see one piece at a time. You're pretty smart. I don't know that you really need to do that, but they say cover up the end numbers whenever there's a sign of inequality and then read it this way. So you're first going to read x plus 3 is greater than 4, or 4 is less than x plus 3. And then the second conjunction, the second condition that has to be satisfied is x plus 3 is less than 10. So what you have to do is kind of realize that there are two conditions, and then you can solve each condition separately. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the one on the left says 4 is less than x plus 3. How would we solve that? We would subtract 3 from both sides, and then you would be left with, let me move this guy out of the way. I'm moving Loki out of the way. And then you would be left with x is greater than 1 on that side, right? And then we're going to do the same thing for that second condition where we have x plus 3 is less than 10. We're going to subtract 3 from both sides, and we have x is less than 7. Okay, now if you're Loki, if you're smart like him, which you are, you're actually smarter, he's saying, hang on just a minute. We can do this in one step because we did the same thing to both sides. So if this is the conjunction that we're starting out with, what we do is we're going to subtract 3 from the middle, subtract 3 from the left, subtract 3 from the right. So we have to do it in every part of the inequality. Okay, so you have to do it 3 times, here, here, and here. All right, so then if you do it all in one step, what you are left with is 1 is less than x, which is less than 7. So that's what we got by doing it separately. You can do it separately or you can do it together in one step. Just remember that you have to do it 3 different times to all of the parts of the inequality. All right, let's jump into example 111.1. All right, here's Loki. He's saying, come on. All right, let's do this. Okay, we are going to graph this inequality. That's what they give you. The first thing is you have to simplify the conjunction. And what are we going to do to isolate the x? Well, it looks like we have to add 4 right here. And we're going to have to add 4 to all of the parts of the inequality. So then when we add that all up, we are going to get -1 is less than or equal to x, and then is less than 6. So remember to keep these parts the same. This had an equal sign in it, put it there. This did not have an equal sign, so don't put one there. All right, now I'm going to move this a little bit out of the way so I can graph it. Okay, so now the next step is to graph it. This is what we're going to graph. And remember that both of these conditions have to be met. It has to be greater than or equal to -1. So I'm going to put, the domain was just integers. So if it's just integers, I'm going to put a bunch of dots, right? So this is greater than -1. I don't know if you can see that, so I'm going to get a brighter color. There we go. Okay, but then I'm going to stop before I get to 6 because it says x has to also be less than 6. So that means 6 is not going to be included. So I'm going to stop at that 5. And then that's it. I've graphed it. I have graphed that inequality. X has to be greater than or equal to -1, so I did include the -1. And x has to be less than 6, so I did not include that one. Perfect. All right, if you've got that, then you can say, I am smart, just like Loki. I am smart. Okay, so since you're so smart, we're going to move on from talking about conjunctions. And I'll just remind you really quick that conjunction implies the word and. That means both the conditions have to be met. X is greater than -2, for example, and x is less than or equal to 4. And because of that word and, this is a conjunction. So both of those conditions have to be met. Get it? Get it. Okay, yes, I think I get it. Following along so far? Now let's talk about a disjunction, and I think you'll see the difference, because a disjunction implies the word either or. So that means either condition is met, one or the other, but it does not have to be both. Okay? So it could be either one side or the other side, not both. Okay, so for example, here we have x is less than or equal to -2, or, and this is the thing that makes it a disjunction, x is greater than 1. And in this domain, we have the set of real numbers here. Okay, so if we graph this, just to show you what it looks like, x has to be, let's start with this, x has to be less than or equal to -2. So if we're less than or equal to -2, I'm going to put a dot here because it includes -2. And since the domain is all real numbers, not just the integers, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. So that's this part of the domain. Now, because we have a disjunction and it's or, that's not the whole problem, because there's also this x is greater than 1. So now this is going to be an open circle at the number 1, and we are going to include all real numbers that are greater than 1. So now look, we have like two separate lines. We have this and we have this. And so it has to be one or the other. If this were an and, then these don't overlap at all. So the answer would be a null point, because it would have to be this and this, and none of it overlaps, so it would be no answer. But because it's or, you have to include all of these, plus you have to include all of these. Okay, get it? So that is a disjunction. Okay, let's go into an example, and I know you are ready for this. He's got two different knives, two different daggers there. You're going to have one or the other, so that's why I put that one. Okay, here we go. Let's graph. X is greater than or equal to 3, or x is less than or equal to -2. So because of the word or, I know that this is going to be a disjunction. You have to have either one or the other. And on this one, the set is integers that we're talking about. So we're only talking about integers. So let's start with x is greater than or equal to 3. That's going to include the 3. It's going to include the 4. It's going to include the 5. And we're going to keep going that way. So I'm going to put a little arrow there. Okay. Now, we have to do this part. X is less than or equal to -2. So because it's equal to -2, I'm going to include that. And then less than is going to go in this direction. Okay. So that's it. That's how we do a disjunction with the word or in the middle. Again, no overlap there. I mean, I guess it could overlap. You could have some overlap. But if you have and, then that means you basically have to have overlap because both the conditions have to be met. All right, let's do example 111.3. This is graph. X is greater than 15 or, here's their disjunction, X is less than or equal to 10. All right, so let's start with X is greater than 15. And our domain here is real numbers. So I am not going to include that 15 because there's no equal sign. And we have to be greater than it. So I'm going to go like that. And now I'll do the second part. X is less than or equal to 10. So I'm going to put a closed circle at 10. I know it has to be less than. And I'm going to have an arrow going in that direction. And guess what? That is it. You have indicated all real numbers that are less than or equal to 10 and that are, I'm sorry, not and, or that are greater than 15. So because of that word or, this is a disjunction. Alrighty, cool. And guess what? You've probably had enough of this. All right, well, have a great day, Zach. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Love ya. Bye.